And there we are. We are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our What Are You Reading program. I am Ryan Tackerby, the Digital Services Librarian, and we're here with librarians from all over the county. Oops, over here on my left, to talk about different books that we've read recently, what we've enjoyed, what we recommend. And we're interested if you're watching this live. Most people seem to watch it after the fact, but if you're watching this live, let us know what you've been reading too and what you think of the books that we talk about. Everything we talk about today will be on our website. You can see the list of everything at thegdl.org/what are you reading. And lots of other things you can find on our website as well. You can see all of our virtual events at thegdl.org/events. So take a look there if you're curious about what else might be coming up. And we also, of course, in all of our branches have our program guide, which you can pick up. It doesn't go very far right now. It goes to the end of May, and then our summer guide will take over, which will be out very soon. You can see all of our exciting summer events, a lot of in-person events, with some virtual events as well. So take a look at that one. That's out very near future. You'll be able to get your hands on that. And we hope to see you at some of our in-person events and back here as well. With that being said, if you are watching this live, please feel free to leave your comments. If you're watching on Facebook or our website or on YouTube, there's a section for you to leave comments that we can see and we can respond to here live. So let us know what your thoughts are. Share what you're reading, and we'd love to see it. With that being said, also, we had a theme this month as well, and maybe I'll switch to Chris. She's the first one here. Do you want to tell about our theme, Chris?
Oh, sure. So this month is the month of May, and we selected stories that deal with mothers. So we all read a story that had some kind of element about a mom. So shall I go ahead with my story? Okay, I didn't hear him, but I'll go ahead. I did the mother.
Sorry, go ahead.
I read The Mother-in-Law by Sally Hepworth. This is the story of Lucy and her relationship with her mother-in-law, Diana. I thought a mother-in-law story would be kind of a nice different take on the mom theme. So early in the story, we are witness to Diana, the mother-in-law's cold personality. And Lucy believes that Diana's personality is due to Diana's disappointment in her son's choice of wife. Thus, Diana doesn't like Lucy. At least that's how Lucy feels. So as the story progresses, we are introduced to the other family members. Lucy's sister-in-law, her husband, Diana's husband, and Lucy's husband. Those are probably kind of the main characters in the story. So in a series of kind of forward and backward in time narrative, we are able to put together this story about why Diana is discovered dead by an apparent suicide. So we learn more about Diana through this back and forth narrative and the possible reasons for her stoic or cold personality. Throughout, we are led to believe that Lucy might be the prime suspect for the faked suicide death. The author tries really hard to make us believe that Lucy's probably the guilty one. But as the story continues, there's a few twists and turns. I wouldn't really call it a thriller, though I think some of the reviews have said it's a thriller. And then in the end, we also find out the truth behind the faked suicide. So I'd recommend this if you're looking for a quick read that focuses on family issues.
How did you first stumble upon this book? Were you just looking for something that fit the theme?
Well, so on Goodreads, I keep a list of things that I want to read. And I had added this to my list quite some time ago, I think in 2019. So as I was looking for a mom-themed book, I was like, oh, hey, here's one that fits the theme as well as it being on my TBR. So
Maybe we need like a "What are you reading?" Goodreads account, or we could add all the books in there. That might be kind of cool.
Oh, yeah, that would be
You know,
good.
right?
I was thinking about, when Sherry asked if she'd reviewed a certain book already, about where we could store all these books that we've read.
Right. It was easy at first to keep track, but now it's harder for me in my mind just to remember what all we've talked about so far.
Right.
All right, Sherry, what do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about your mother book?
Sure. So my mother book is The Queen's Secret by Karen Harper. I chose it because it's about the Queen Mum, so Queen Elizabeth II's mother. It's historical fiction. Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon was the Queen consort of King George VI and mother, obviously, of the current Queen. There's flashbacks to her childhood and her early years, but the primary focus on this one is on the time between Edward's abdication to Mary Wallace Simpson and World War II. So it kind of goes throughout the war. The book takes us through preparing her husband to be king, because obviously he wasn't expecting to be king, raising two princesses. They talk a little bit about what Elizabeth and Margaret did during the war. Actually, I found it surprising that Elizabeth actually knows how to fix army vehicles, something she learned during the war. And her dealings with historic figures like Eleanor Roosevelt and Winston Churchill, who this book, if it's to be believed, because it is historical fiction, she didn't really like Winston Churchill, but she grew to respect him and how he dealt with things during the war. She's also trying very hard to keep some secrets to herself. I don't want to reveal those, and I'm not actually sure that they're true. I did do a little research, and it seems like there's rumors that some of these secrets that she has were possibly true. So it's kind of a little gossipy historical fiction. Hitler did call her the most dangerous woman in Europe, and this book does show why. She's pretty tough. Buckingham Palace gets bombed at one point, and she actually says she's glad that it got bombed because they can look the people in the East End in the eye after that. She does also go to the East End and climb through rubble to visit with families who've lost everything in the Blitz. I thought it was an interesting look at the royal family, and it'd be really good for people who liked watching The Crown or read authors like Marie Benedict.
I like tying it into The Crown. That makes a lot of sense. And I've asked you this a lot before on here, but I feel like we always have different people who are watching. So I'm going to ask you again. You enjoy reading a lot of historical fiction. I feel like that consistently comes up in all of your, all the every month when we do this. What is it you enjoy about historical fiction so much?
I like how much detail there is, and there always seems to be something that I didn't know that I can then go and look up and see, oh yeah, that did happen, or I didn't know this about that person. I've noticed lately that most of the historical fiction I've read has to deal with women, and I feel like since they get left out of history so much, it's kind of interesting to kind of put them back in to history and see what really happened.
I like it. That makes a lot of sense. All right, excellent. Thank you, Sherry. And Kristen, what are you going to talk about first?
Okay, so my mother book is The School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan. And this is about Frida, who is a Chinese American woman, and she is kind of struggling through life right now. She has a career, but her parents aren't like super proud of it because they don't feel like it's like worthy of their kind of like sacrifices they made coming over to the US from China. Her husband is having an affair, and she's just having a really hard time right now. And the only kind of bright spot in her life right now is her daughter, Harriet. And then the book starts out with Frida having the worst day possible in her life. And basically, she ends up just leaving her daughter alone for 2 hours. And she gets busted, and the police come and they take her daughter away, and they give her daughter to her husband, who they're divorced now, and so Frida has to go through this program where the government has created this program for mothers who have basically have done something that they consider harmful to their children, whether that's mothers who check their phones while their kids are playing on the playground, or they let their children walk home alone, or basically just some lapse of judgment in regards to their children. So now Frida goes to this Big Brother kind of like institution, and they measure the success or failure of her devotion to her child. And basically, if she doesn't do this program, then she cannot get Harriet back. And so the book kind of revolves mostly around her time in this institution, and it is the weirdest stuff I've read. This book is very dystopian. It kind of reminds me a little bit of The Handmaid's Tale, but more like futuristic, I guess. I don't know how I feel. I think it's a really good book. It's like a page turner. You want to know what happens next. But at the same time, I don't like how it ended. It's very open-ended, which can be good or bad depending on how you like to wrap up your stories. It's very... I feel like it's very relevant to what's going on currently in our society. I don't know. I really don't know how I feel about this book, but I think that if you want to read something that's like dystopian, but also might make you really frustrated, you should give this book a go. But just be warned that it doesn't really wrap up very neatly. So it could be maybe like turning into like maybe having a sequel. So maybe that's why it didn't really wrap up. Or it also could just be like maybe that's how the author wanted it to end. So, but overall, I think it's a pretty good book.
You described it in one of my favorite ways to describe something, which is it's weird, like weird. So can you elaborate on what you mean by weird at all?
Well, just some of the things that happen while Frida's in the institution. Like one example is, so they can't be with their children. So they have these like robotic children that they have to take care of while they're in the institution. But they're like really realistic robotic children. So like it makes the mothers there really uncomfortable because they're like real children. So they're supposed to like form attachments to them, but like they have to mother them in like a certain way. And so they're like very, it's very difficult for them to figure out how they're supposed to do things. And they have to mother in a specific way. But they also know that these children aren't real. So it's like very weird to me. I don't know.
It does sound weird. It sounds interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Kristen. Nancy, what are you going to talk about first?
Oh, well, I had some sick days in March and April. Apologize for that. And I did not get the memo that we were doing mother's books. So I'm out in left field with mine. Just bear with me. I read first of all, my grandson got a hedgehog for his birthday. So I've been reading about hedgehogs and getting them children's books, and we've been studying up on the subject. So I read A Handful of Happiness, How a Prickly Creature Softened a Prickly Heart by Massimo Vachetta. And Massimo he lives in Italy, and he's a vet, and his major practice is cows. And he's an impeccable dresser. This is a biography. This is true. He's a very sharp dresser and very precise. And he's bored. He's bored with his life. He's bored with his practice. He's single, but dating a woman. But another vet begs him to take a little hedgehog who's 3 days old. And he has no idea. He's just got the rudimentary caregiving instructions. So he really has to dive into it and figure out how to keep this little thing alive. And I do kitten rescue. So I could relate. He had to wake up and feed this little thing every 3 hours. And you have to stimulate their excretion like a mother would. And like you really have to go all in with these little tiny things. And they really just speak to his heart. And he ends up rescuing a lot of them. And once the word gets out, people know where to go and where to bring them. And he has European hedgehogs. And here they're like an exotic pet, but over there they're just walking around like raccoons and possums. So it's like a wild creature rescue. And he even ends up creating his own rescue. So it's a super tiny little book. It was a real quick read, and it throws in a lot of facts, which I appreciated. But it was just a cute story about hedgehogs.
That was going to be the name of my autobiography too. So now I have to come up with a new name when I eventually write that.
Aw.
Thanks, Nancy. All right, Chris, what else do you have to talk about today?
So my next book is called The Better Place by Dwayne Murray, and it's a middle grade graphic novel, and it's illustrated by Sean Daly. This graphic novel is about Dylan, and I'm not sure if they tell me exactly how old Dylan is, but he's pretty young. You can kind of see in the picture, I would guess he's probably 7 or 8, but I don't know if they actually tell us that. So anyway, he's recently moved. He hasn't made any new friends, and his mom is always busy. So he hangs out with his grandpa. And him and his grandpa go on all these adventures, sometimes getting into trouble and sometimes not. But they use their imagination for all these adventures, and it's kind of very entertaining to see what these two get up to. But then one day, Grandpa disappears, and the explanation that is given to Dylan is that Grandpa, has gone to the better place. Dylan doesn't really know what that is. So he decides he's going to go look for Grandpa, because Grandpa wouldn't just leave him and go off to the better place without him. So he sets out to find the better place. And along the way, he meets another older gentleman that lives like in an assisted living facility, and they kind of become friends. The illustrations in this graphic novel are fantastic. I absolutely love them. The story is somewhat sad because as adults, we know that the better place is that Grandpa has died, and Dylan doesn't really understand that or know that. And when he goes and meets this other elderly gentleman at the assisted living, he tells Dylan too, oh, my wife has gone to the better place. And so they go off on these adventures. And I'd recommend this story to be read with any middle grade child experiencing grief or loss, because I think it handled it really well. And it was a gentle story. I would also recommend it just for an adult to read, because I think as we get older and we deal with older parents and relatives, it's a good story to help with that anticipation, I guess. I can't hear you.
There we go. How did you come across this one? Was this something you just, when you bought, you thought would be interesting, or?
I think somebody had returned it and the cover caught my eye, so I decided to read it.
And then my question is going to be like, who would you recommend it for? What age range? I think that was you had a good answer to that already before I could even ask the question.
Oh yeah, I would definitely. I mean, I think you could totally read it aloud to probably like 3rd grade through 6th grade, especially for that, grief or loss if they're experiencing, a death in the family or something like that.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Mhm.
Sherry, what do you want to talk about next?
My second book is The Cartographers by Peng Shepherd. It's a book about libraries, sort of. So of course I was going to read it. So Nell Young, the main character, used to work in the cartography and rare maps department at New York Public Library until her father, who's a very renowned cartographer, has her banned from the library and blackballed from the profession after they get into a fight over what to Nell is a seemingly insignificant road map, the kind you used to just be able to buy in gas stations. So they haven't spoken since. It's been several years. Nell's working, making like fake copies of maps for people to hang on their walls because she can't get a job in the library or working with rare maps anymore. And then Nell's father's murdered at the library. And after she takes his possessions home, she finds the supposedly insignificant road map hidden amongst his things. So she starts to think the road map maybe is anything but insignificant, but she doesn't really know why. So she's trying to figure out what's so important about the map that her father would blow up her career and stop speaking to her. So this trail leads her to a group of mysterious people known as the Cartographers, and it puts her and her ex-boyfriend in danger while they try to figure out what's going on with this mysterious map. She also discovers, while looking up information about other libraries that may hold the maps, that every copy of the map is listed as missing in every library. And she accidentally enters the cataloging information, and so now this mysterious group is after her for this map. The setting was really interesting. You get a really inside look at the New York Public Library. The characters were really quirky and interesting. There were a few like weird gaps in it that I didn't quite understand what was going on. And it was left pretty open-ended at the end, so I'm kind of hoping there's a sequel and that it's not just leaving us hanging at the end. I mean, it wasn't like a cliffhanger, but there's some things that weren't quite wrapped up at the end. So I'm not really sure if you call this mystery or fantasy or what you would call it, but it has elements of both in it.
Maybe another theme of this episode can be, books that might have sequels or potential sequels, seems like.
Yes.
Do you like it when books kind of mix up these different genres together?
I don't read too many of those, but this one just kind of caught my eye, and yeah, I'm not really sure what to call it. Maybe magical realism, possibly.
It sounds really interesting. Really neat idea for a book. All right. Thank you, Sherry. Kristen, what do you want to talk about next?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about The Book of Night by Holly Black. I'm sure a lot of people are already familiar with Holly Black. She's written a lot of teen fiction, but this is her first adult debut. So this book is considered a modern dark fantasy, and it kind of has like thieves and secret societies, and mostly it's about shadows. So Charlie Hall's our main character, and she is a bartender, and she is also like a thief. And in this world, your shadows can be altered for like entertainment or like cosmetic preferences. But you can also use them to kind of like increase your power or influence in this world. And you can also alter like somebody's like feelings or their memories. But like when you do that, there's like kind of a cost to that because you can kind of take hours or days away from your life. And then your shadow holds like all parts of you that you want to keep hidden. So Charlie's like a low-level con artist. She works as a bartender, but she's kind of trying to distance herself away from all those like con artist jobs and jobs where she's had to like steal things and stuff for other people. She's trying to get away from that. But unfortunately, she kind of gets dragged back into that life because of some other chaos that's been going around in the town. And So unfortunately, there are some murders happening, and there's like doppelgangers because of the shadows, and there's like different shadow thieves, and like her sister's in on this because her sister's like really wants to do like some shadow altering and all that kind of stuff, and it's a really interesting book. I think it kind of reminds me a little bit of like the dark fantasy books, like I don't know, like Sookie Stackhouse, like the vampire stuff, and like just those like really fun books that you read, and it's like kind of a quick read, and you know, you don't really have to think a lot about it because it's just like a really fun read that you want to, you know, just relax with. It's obviously like gearing up for a sequel, so it definitely fits our theme this week or this month. I will say that I kind of felt it was like a little convoluted with all the shadow stuff because I think that it's like really there's like a lot built into this shadow world, and I think maybe the author is going like too much into the shadow world because it just feels convoluted and like a little bit confusing at times. But overall, I think it's a good story. It's a good book, and you really just like the characters in it, and of course you just don't like the bad characters in it. So it's like I said, it's just a really just interesting, fun read, and I think for her debut adult novel, it's really good, and it just really fits with like I've read some of her teen fiction, and it just really fits with what she writes. So overall, good book, and if you like her teen fiction, I definitely recommend it. And if you just want to like a fun book to read, I recommend it.
That's a really great story. I don't even know what to ask. But I think it's fun. I think the shadow stuff sounds really interesting, like a fun thing to play with.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to read?
Well, it took me a while because I have been trying to read other things at the same time. So, like, I'm one of those people that read multiple books at one time. So it did take me a while to read it. And because I guess like maybe the shadow stuff was like a little too confusing for me. So sometimes I just had to put it down because I'm like, I just don't really care about the shadow stuff that much. But the rest of it was good. So
Awesome. Thanks. All right, Nancy, what is your second book for today?
I read The Last Chance Library by Freya Sampson. And this is just a little simple, fun read. It won't take you very long. It's a paperback, a couple hundred pages. And I was trying to see when it came out. It doesn't say here. It's maybe a year old. Anyway, it's about a library in a little English village. And this young woman's mother was the librarian formerly. And now June Jones is what we would consider a library assistant. And she finds out her library is going to close. And all of the regular patrons are quirky and funny and sweet, and they're all in an uproar. And they decide to take this issue in hand. They want to make a coffee shop out of it. So it goes before the board, and there's picketing and things like that. And it's kind of coming of age. It's kind of a coming of age story for June Jones because she's extremely shy. There's a little bit of a love interest, and there's a very sweet surprise ending relating to one of the patrons. So sometimes I read nonfiction or I read books on World War I or II, and I have to take a break and just read something simple and nice. And this was a very nice story.
Do you feel like a lot of the characters in the book you could like relate to or imagine meeting in person at your own library?
Yes, exactly. We were talking about it at work, and there's one of the characters who is very similar to one of the characters in the book. Yes.
All right.
We have characters at our library too.
Chris, before we get started with your last book, someone left a comment and said, I just discovered your virtual programs the other week and I'm loving them. Do you have any recommendations for novels about hiking or outdoors adventures that my son and I could read together? And I feel like you read a few books, maybe like this recently. Do you have any recommendations that you'd suggest?
I did see that comment, and I was wondering, like, well, how old is the son? Because those two books I did read earlier in the year, The River by Peter Heller, and the other one was A Blizzard of Polar Bears by Alice Henderson, were both adventure stories that I think could be read aloud to someone, depending on the age of her son. But I was also thinking about, is it Bear? Gosh, I'm not going to say his last name right. Grills, is it?
Mhm.
He's a outdoor adventurer. He writes a series of books for kids that might fill the bill for this particular request.
Okay. We'll see if you can leave, the age of your son. That'll help us too. Then maybe any of the librarians, or you came to the right place. You have a lot of librarians here who may have some recommendations for you. And if anyone wants to chime in with anything they think about as you go up.
Yeah, I feel like anything by Gary Paulson too would be good.
Oh yeah.
And then Sharman just said in the chat, Hatchet is good for middle grade.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to talk about, Chris? What's your last book here?
Okay, so my last book is called I Hope This Finds You Well by Kate Baer, I believe is her name. This is a collection of erasure poems. Erasure poetry is when the writer erases existing text and recreates it as a poem. So I'm a huge fan of blackout poetry. So when this was recommended to me by one of our coworkers, and it was about erasure poems, I said, I got to give it a try. It's a slim volume, so it doesn't take long to kind of go through it. I think I did read it in 2 settings because after a while, I needed kind of that little bit of a break from the content of the original emails. So in any case, Kate gets these emails sent to her, and a lot of them are not very nice. They tend to be a little bit political, and she takes the email and she erases it to create these other more positive and inspiring poems. So the way the book is set up, on the left page is the original email, so you can see what these people wrote to her. And then on the right side is how she erases the text and creates a new poem. So I really liked it because, again, I said, I really love blackout poetry. So this was a cool kind of next step in that kind of genre of poetry. I also found myself stopping frequently just to kind of reflect on how she changed the original email to this kind of more positive poem to create a different sentiment than what the person had written to her. So anyway, yeah.
That's a really neat idea. I'm really intrigued by this.
Yeah.
Do you have any other like poetry recommendations? Or so you said you read a lot of poetry. I guess how do you pick something out to read? If you're looking for it?
I guess, so I do. So I guess I do read a fair amount of poetry. I love Mary Oliver. So if anything comes across or I see it in a review that is compared to her, I will read it. I also try to, when I'm looking at when we're reviewing books to purchase, I'll pick up names of poets just from that and kind of add it to my list of, I got to check that out later.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Sherry, what is your last book?
My last one is Much Ado About You by Samantha Young. It's romance-ish. Well, I guess it would be a romance. So I'm a big fan of Samantha Young, and this book's been on my radar for a while. Most of her stuff is self-published. This one is one of the few she has that's traditionally published. So it's a little bit different than most of her self-published stuff. So Evie's life isn't going to her plan. She's had a lot of bad dates from dating apps. Her friends all seem to be married and having babies, and she's expecting to get a promotion at work, but she's passed over for someone who's completely underqualified for the job. So she gets mad and quits and decides to take a vacation running a bookstore, which is seriously one of my dream vacations, in northern England. While she's there in this tiny village in northern England, she meets Rowan Robinson, who's a local farmer, after she rescues his dog Shadow from getting hit by a car. She's running the bookstore during the day. She's interfering in the villagers' lives by afternoon and night. She's trying to fix problems that the townspeople have. And so Roan wants more from her than friendship, but she's nervous about starting a relationship with someone who lives so far away. So while she's inserting herself into town life, she has to decide if she wants to leave everything she's known behind for a chance at happiness, because this group of townspeople becomes like family to her. I really liked the two main characters, Evie and Roan, both individually and as a couple. I loved the village setting, and the characters were really kind of quirky and interesting. And there's like a feud between two different pubs in town based on something that happened like years ago that's kind of funny. And this book is it's kind of like a Hallmark movie in book form. It's just really entertaining, kind of light and fluffy, if that's what you're looking for.
Did you say there was? Oops. Yeah. Did you say that there was a conflict between two different pugs in town? Or
Pubs.
Oh, that's what. Okay, I had to check. Well, you said you really like Samantha Young as an author. What are her books like? Your other books like?
She writes a little bit of everything. Like, I know there's some paranormal ones which aren't really my thing, so I haven't read those. She has a series. The first one's called On Dublin Street. That's about a group of friends in Ireland. She's an Irish author. She also has a series. The last book just came out, I think, last week. That's kind of romantic suspense in like a Scottish castle. I don't remember the name of that series off the top of my head, but each one's different. They're a little. This one's more slow burn than her others, so just be aware of that if you don't like things to be a little more explicit, if you decide to try some of her other stuff.
All right. Thanks, Sherry. All right, Kristen, what is your last book for the day?
Okay, so my last book is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This is a Japanese book translated. This book, so I'm going to be gushing because I absolutely loved this book. This book is probably one of my new favorites. So just, bear with me. This book is about Keiko, and she has really never fit in. She's 36 years old and she lives in Tokyo, and she has worked at the same convenience store since she was 18, and she's happy. She's found peace, she's found purpose in her life, and out in the store, unlike anywhere else, she understands the rules of social interactions. She understands how things work there, and she kind of does her best to copy the way people how the dress, the mannerisms, speech, and all that stuff, because outside of the store she doesn't really understand how things work. And things have, managers have come and go in the 18 years that Keiko's worked there, but she's still there and she's just really happy. And however, the people close to her, like her sister and her friends, they're increasingly pressuring her to find a husband and to find start a proper career. So because of that, she does something to take action for that. And I don't want to say because it would kind of spoil it, but she, one thing that's really interesting about her is that she takes things very literally. And, when I say she doesn't understand social interactions and things, one example of this is first of all, let me preface this by saying this is a dark humor book. When she's in elementary school, there's two boys fighting, and one of they're saying, we need to stop this fight. And so she grabs a shovel and hits one of the boys with the shovel. So she doesn't understand. This is how she is. She just doesn't understand things outside of what's going on in her mind and things literally. So she doesn't want to do things that are considered normal, and she likes how things are going. And so I said, she does something and to kind of change that so that she can appease her family and her her friends and everything. But the best thing is that she, at the end, she kind of realizes that what she knows and how she feels in the convenience store is like what's best for her. And to me, that's like, I don't know, I love how she did that. So some really great quotes about this book. I just want to say one. I found this on Goodreads. Roxanne Gay said this. She called it a quirky novel about a 36-year-old woman who works in a convenience store and cannot conceive herself beyond her job. But this is also about a woman who doesn't know how to be human in the way others expect her to. At times funny, at times sad, always compelling. And that to me is like the perfect description of this book. And it's a really short book. It's 163 pages. I read this in one day. I could not put it down. Compelling. It's very compelling. I absolutely love this book, and I would recommend it to anybody. It's brilliant. It's just a brilliant, charming. It's just good. I can't say enough about it. I would recommend it to everyone, anybody who just wants to read a great book with a character that's just unforgettable and lovable, and at the same time, just not a normal, just wants to be herself, but like that's not normal to everybody else. I don't know.
It's interesting to me being such like a humorous book from the what you mentioned in the reviews and the cover, also being a translated book, right? I feel like it's coming up one of the harder things to kind of really nail down and get.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like the translation did a really good job in kind of taking these ideas and.
Yeah, and the translator too has translated other books by her. So there's another book by her that's out that we have in the library. It's called Earthlings, and the same translator also did that book. Haven't read it yet, but I immediately checked it out yesterday when I got to work. So I'm interested to see, but I've heard it's also really, really good. And she does, and I know she's translated other stuff by her as well. So yeah, I'm a lifelong fan of Sayaka Murata. So.
That's really neat. Awesome. Yep. Thanks, Kristen.
Yep.
All right, Nancy, what is our last book for the day?
Oh, I just wanted to say with Kristen's book, I'll definitely read that because I really enjoy character development and characters that stay with you for a while. So definitely we'll read that. My last book is a nonfiction. I am all over the place this month and last month also. So I've got some really interesting ones. I don't know if any of you have read anything from Mary Roach, but she pursues scientific phenomenon in nonfiction, but she breaks it down and makes it like a story. It's very interesting. Everything she writes about is very interesting. And this book is called Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers. So it's morbid. I have friends, and I also read some books that are very dark, like I think I did a book review on Smoke Gets in My Eyes, Tales from the Crematorium. And there's also another one about a trauma and death cleaner and her stories. This is kind of like that. What happens to cadavers? What's this all about with cadavers? She starts way back in the 1800s and explains the grave robbing and how they used to experiment on anything that was already dead, anything they could get their hands on. These scientists, they didn't know anything about the circulatory system. They didn't know how the heart works. They didn't know if the brain was the seat of intelligence or the heart was. They had to figure all this stuff out. And over the years they did, and it's just fascinating. And it wasn't popular to leave yourself to be a human cadaver. And they had to do a very large publicity campaign to make it socially acceptable. And now it's considered extremely socially acceptable to do that, and even kind. And they were talking also about in the future what cadaver science might look like. There are a lot of computer simulations, but the doctors medical doctors still believe that everyone should practice on human cadavers. And it's not a very long book, and it's just super interesting. She's got another one on space exploration, and I'm going to read that one next. But she's just got a lot of really good, curious subjects.
Ryan, I think you're muted.
No, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my microphone keeps turning on and off. I don't know why. Anyway, thank you very much, Nancy. Before we go for the day, does anyone have any more suggestions about hiking or outdoor adventure books? I saw you sent something, Chris.
Yeah, I thought of that earlier. It's older. I can't remember what year it was built, but the author John Krakauer, he did the climb in 1996, so it's probably an older book, but maybe it will fill the bill for an adventure story with a 12-year-old to read aloud. It's called Into Thin Air: A Personal Account of the Mount Everest Disaster by John Krakauer. There's versions out there with some pictures that are kind of cool, so you can read it and see the pictures, and it's written really well. It reads like an adventure story, so I think that would be definitely a story that they would enjoy reading together.
Awesome. All right. One last thing before we go to Charmin left a comment and said, Stiff was so interesting. I read it by the pool one summer. It's not your typical beach read, which I think is really
No.
cool. So, all right. So with all that being said, we will be back next month in June with more books to talk about. If you are watching this after the fact, let us know in the comments if you read any of these and what your thoughts are and what you're reading right now and what you think of that. And we can talk about those next time too. So thanks for watching, and we hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.